We did over 120,000 in sales. The business really kind of took off while I was on house arrest. So I had a couple of drinks. I felt kind of tired. And so I actually pulled my car off to the side of the road and I decided to take a nap. Officer knocked on the window. Part of the car was in a non-parking zone. So he was telling me to move the car. It was like,
have you had a drink?
And we all know how that goes.
We document and share best practices around owning, operating, and managing world-class wedding venues.
What is up, everyone? We have a special episode of the Venue RX for you today. I have my dear friend Lindsey Lucas here with me on the podcast today, and we are going to be talking about a number of different things, but we're going to do a little bit of a role reversal, and Lindsey's going to be asking me some questions about common sense events, the business that we have, management, venue management, what we do in terms of the work that we do with the venues we serve, and a couple of new things that we're starting to roll out this year, towards the end of the year, as well as into 2024. So I'm really excited about this. And Lindsey, thank you so much for being here and just jumping in. This is going to be a really fun conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm super excited about it. We've had so many conversations offline about all of these different topics. And I know how great you are at each thing, but I'm excited to dive in deeper so that your audience can know too, because you're always the interviewer. You're always the one asking the questions.
Yeah, and seriously, right before we got on, I was just saying, I'm like, oh man, what's Lindsey gonna ask? But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited for this, and I love our industry so much, and I think that we've made so many mistakes in our business growth journey, and I think there's kind of a business side of this, and then the art of venue operations, and we don't own any of the venues that we manage, but we do manage them from such a baseline level. Like, we're taking into account payments and mortgages and loan payments and things like that, because we have to factor that into the management that we do, so it makes sense with our partners.
Yeah, everything starts with the numbers. Okay, well, time out. I want to back up. You said that you've always loved the wedding industry. I want to know, what first drew you in? Why did you just fall head over heels, so to speak? Because obviously you've been in it for a while, right? So there has to be something that keeps motivating you, and it always comes back to your why, right?
Yes. So that's actually hilarious, because we've been in about 11 years now. Ironically, my wife and I, we went down to the courthouse to get married. Believe it or not. We had no wedding. I mean, to speak of, right? We went to the courthouse, we signed the paperwork, and it wasn't on a whim or anything like that. We had been thinking about it, but it was a very quick decision for sure. And it came on the heels of finding out she was pregnant, and a lot of life changes there at that point. But we had been dating for a while, and she was like, "Hey, we're doing this." And my wife, she doesn't appear on the podcast ever. We need to have her on. That'd be awesome. Yeah. But she's very driven. She's very determined. She kind of has, things that she wants and sees for her future. And so she's like, "Hey, we're getting married. We're doing this." And I was like, "Okay, let's go for it." And so we did that. And then 6 months later, we ended up starting a staffing company. And that is where the industry exposure and experience started, because at that time, I didn't really have venue experience per se, but I did have experience in hospitality. And I had worked in so many different restaurants. I had managed restaurants. I had done everything from dishwashing to bartending. And so it was that point where there was a catering company locally in the area that wanted some help. And so I signed up. I went to a venue, locally here. And then they said, "Hey, we need some more people." So I said, "Hey, well, bring my wife." She was pregnant at the time. We were both in college, just looking for extra money. Yeah. She's still pregnant 10 years later. We are going on six babies, which is awesome.
That's incredible.
But we worked, and then she comes from a family of 8, and I come from a family of 4, and so we, as the catering company, needed more temporary staff. They said, "Hey, do you have any others?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." Younger sisters, brothers, whoever it was. And then we started reaching out to their friends. And so soon that pool of people grew and grew. At the same time, though, we were also working. We were both finishing our college educations. I had various other jobs that I was holding at the time. I worked in insurance and also still for restaurants. And it was really at that point, there was a really critical piece there, which was I had an opportunity to manage a fine dining restaurant, luxury cinema as a part of that. It was a really neat concept. And I went and did that. And I did that for about 3 months. And I thought it was kind of in my mind, it was like this dream job. And there was job security and my second son was about to be born. And I thought, man, this is what I need to do. And I got in there and I hired and onboarded almost 250 people, trained everyone, like really launched this thing. And it's gorgeous. It's still, operational today. But really at that point, we were also juggling the staffing. And I started to realize that my identity, I really resonated more with entrepreneurship, and I really wanted to do that more. And also there were a lot of things that were creating a strain in driving an hour one direction to work at that other job and also juggling staffing. And so through a number of different events, I ended up quitting that job, still great terms with that team over there, but I ended up quitting that and really launching. And in the next 3 months, we did over 120,000 in sales. The business really kind of took off because I was focused on it. And the crazy thing is I did that next 3 months, that kind of result in the business happened while I was on house arrest.
Oh, really?
Super interesting. And I haven't really talked about this, but I was really at the time, I don't think my judgment was the best. I think as I've gotten older, my judgment has been better. And so, I'd have, drinks after work with friends, after working at the restaurant. And I had a couple of drinks. I felt kind of tired. And so I actually pulled my car off to the side of the road and I decided to take a nap. Officer knocked on the window. Part of the car was in a non-parking zone. So he was telling me to move the car. It was like, have you had a drink? And we all know how that goes. So, because of how it was located, I had to do house arrest in San Diego County. And it was that or a very, very short stint in jail. And I said, look, house arrest, I can study, I can do a bunch of things. I was still in college at the time, just like finishing out my bachelor's degree. And I said, I'm going to go that route. And so during that time, I had to be accountable for my time in a way that I never had to be before. And that was really, really important for me specifically because that's something that I struggled with, accountability and discipline. And so that time was really transformative and really, I think, not only put these restraints on me that you feel like it'd be harder to deal with, but it made me like look at that as an obstacle. And I was working with limited resources of time and money and all of that. But despite all that, we still were able to grow the business significantly. And from that point on, the business almost tripled that year. And then the next year, it almost tripled again. And I'm really grateful for that. Like it was a very tough time and I'm not proud of a lot of the decisions that kind of led to that, but I am proud of the fact that we came out of it pretty strong and with a lot of momentum heading into actually like venue management.
That's amazing. Okay. So I want to back up because you dropped a pretty heavy number in that story. And you said that you hired like 150 employees, like hired and onboarded and trained. Like, did you have formal training? How did you get that formal training? Like, where did you go? Or was this all like trial and error as the business grew? Because that was in a short amount of time, right?
Yeah, super short. It was, we did that initial hiring push. We did almost 250 people. It was
wow.
Yeah, it was like 236, I think was the final number, but we had to hire chefs. We had to hire front of house staff. We had to hire bar staff. We were setting up a bar program and that all happened in about a 90-day window. The group there had not recruiters, but they had people that were going out and kind of creating job postings and things like that. So it was my job to hold the interviews and then decide who we were going to hire. Once we got hired, train them, and I could train front of house and bar, but I wasn't going to train the chefs, the super chefs and some of those. And a lot of them came, very well trained already, and they worked with our head chef. But yeah, that was pretty crazy. And I don't really have formal training in that, but I had worked long enough in the staffing side of things where I felt like I had identified some key traits that we looked for on the staffing side of things that we then adapted into hiring for the restaurant.
I love that. I love that. I really love like when I'm working with clients, I'll ask, and they come from the corporate world, I'll ask them, like, what did you do in the corporate world? What were your strengths? What were your weaknesses in that role? And then how can we like apply that to your venue? And corporate gets a bad rap, but you learn a lot of good lessons in corporate, like things not to do, things that worked and that you can carry over or improve on. So I love that you took advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that's a similar thing that I've seen interviewing venue owners on this podcast is a lot of times when they come from a, like you said, corporate background, or even something in design or something in, whatever the background, whatever the industry they come from, they bring that. And even if they had a bad experience, or even if it wasn't the best outcome that they wanted, they bring a lot of the lessons that they learned, both good and bad, to bear in their venue. And it ends up being better. It ends up kind of being uniquely theirs because of their experiences. So I mean, that resonates so much.
Yeah. Okay. So like, let me just review to make sure like my head is wrapped around the timeline here. So you and Jules got married. 6 months later, you started CSE.
Yep.
And then what was like your growth pattern from there? Like just a high level overview, and like, where are you at today?
Totally. So first year we did, so it was the end of 2016, it was at the end of 2014 is when we actually started. And then we basically I think we did like $30,000 in the first year, and then like $50,000 in the second year. I mean, we didn't have a fast start because again, it was just kind of this side hustle that we had. Yeah. And then as we saw a need for really high quality staff in the Southern California area, we kept growing. So that was then a couple of years later was this whole situation with the restaurant, building that 3-month time really, kind of hit the six figure mark and got past that. And then the next couple of years we built to doing right under $1 million in revenue right before COVID. And COVID was going to be a really big breakout year because we already, at that point, we were doing large events, Comic-Con, Stagecoach, a lot of brand and influencer events, like staffing for those. We were doing like golf tournaments. We were doing a number of different large scale events. And so the next year we already had a lot of those relationships lined up, and even some reservations and deposits for these really, really large events from a staffing perspective. So we were going to, I think we were like 980,000 or something like that ending 2019. And it was like 2020 was going to be the year that we just like really exploded because we had all these strategic things laid out, and we had some people that we hired, and we were excited about that. And I should mention, in 2018 we had started managing a venue, so that's really where our venue management experience started. But we didn't know what we were doing. It was like, hey, you do all this staffing for us, like, can you sell some weddings? So we were like, yeah, like I love sales, let's do it, and so we learned. I mean, it was like trial and error. And so today we switched. So my story includes kind of part one of Common Sense Events, which is a staffing company. And then part two is venue management. And that started in 2018, but then, through 2020 had to refund a lot of those weddings. Really, on the venue management side, it was difficult. And then in 2020 picked up a second client. 2021, we picked up 2 more. In 2022, we picked up some consulting clients, but then also picked up another client. We gave one client their venue back to the owners. One client had problems with the county, so we dealt with some county problems, then restarted. So there's a lot, like in this short time, it's been about 5 years that we've managed venues. We've started venues, shut venues down. We've refunded money. We've not refunded money. We've been able to touch it in a lot of different ways. And we do, our business is doing well over 7 figures for the last couple of years. And I would say our real focus now is building the business to be as smooth of an operating machine as possible across multiple venues, and building out the consulting and kind of education side, which has become a real passion of mine through the Venue RX and through what we're doing, with Weeva and everything. So yeah, that's that's the timeline in a nutshell. There's a lot of pieces there, but I tried to summarize as much as I could.
Okay, so I have one question with CSE and your venue management side, and then I want to dive into consulting, because that's really what I'm interested in as a fellow consultant. So just real quick, just in case anybody is slightly confused, what is the difference between your staffing company and then venue management? Or is it kind of like the staffing company is a leg of your venue management? What's the difference?
Billy, well, and that's a great question. So staffing is completely different. We did kind of traditional temporary staffing. So a catering company or a venue or a planner or even a couple would call us and say, hey, I need 4 staff for this event. I need 35 staff for that event. I need 80 staff for this big, like festival or, conference or something, whatever it was, right? That was staffing. During COVID, or really right after COVID, we had the opportunity to be acquired by a larger staffing firm. And there were 2 staffing companies that we had been friendly with, and they were our competitors technically, but I think we served kind of a different market than they served. And I know they were looking to diversify in COVID, both of them. I went out, had meetings with both of the CEOs of those companies and just chatted. And we ended up doing an acquisition deal with one of the companies that I really felt like would serve our current client base, because I wanted to make sure, like, we provided really high quality customer service and really hands-on customer service. And a lot of the staffing companies that are out there, because they are so large, they really rely on technology, and that does pull away a little bit from the experience. And so we were acquired by them. They acquired not the brand, but they acquired the book of business, our staff list, and all of our client relationships. And so we kind of offboarded that. So now, even though we are staffing, like we do provide staff for venues, we don't, like, you can't call us up and get us to send out 3 bartenders for, a wedding somewhere. We only do the staffing for the venues that we actually manage.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So, I said that was my last question, but one more. Are you, for venue management, are you still taking on venue management clients? And what type of venues do you work with? All or a specific niche? Like, what does it look like?
In the beginning, it was all, for sure. But now,
that's how we all start, right?
Yeah. Now we definitely have seen a certain type of venue that we work very well with. And these venues, our venues on the lowest end do, just over $500,000. And then on the high end, we're doing like 1.3 million in sales. So there's a wide range in terms of what the venue is capable of doing. But my real goal is for a venue management situation or arrangement to work with an owner, it has to be a win-win. And so we need to be able to sell enough for that venue owner that we can pay for ourselves, and we can also create a return for that venue owner, so that not only do they not have to do any of the work, any of the operational work, any of the marketing, any of the sales, any of that, but then they also get paid. And we like to see at least a 6-figure payday for our owners. So depending on how the relationship is built out, we have to work with a venue that really does at least 300,000 or is capable of at least doing 300,000. And so when we look at it from a money component, we also look at it from a style and design component. We are looking to manage, wineries, ranches, retreats, luxury resorts. We will do anything. We work with 2 churches. So the churches created a separate venue space, and we have a very specific package that we're able to offer to churches to really work with the limitations and things that they have. We also, like I mentioned, we've worked with several wineries. We've worked with some horse ranches. So there's a pretty good variety. We also have a partnership with a city. So the relationships have been really, really diverse for us. It comes down to, what's the projected revenue that we feel like we can do. It has to make sense as far as the numbers go. And then we want to manage interesting properties. We want to have a collection of very, very interesting, very unique properties with great picture opportunities, where we can really push the branding and the marketing of those those spaces. And so, yeah, we absolutely are taking new clients. We just actually are taking clients out of state now. So we have venues in California, but now we're just now branching out to other states. So we just are launching a venue in Georgia currently. And we want to go to Texas, my home state, and we want to go other places as well. But we're starting one state at a time and really excited about that.
That's awesome. Well, I feel like I could talk to you forever about the venue management side of things, but I really, really want to dive into your consulting, because this is something that I feel like you should have been doing all along, with as talented as you are, with all of your skill set and your background and your experience, both in the corporate world and specializing with wedding venues. And I was a little shocked. We had been friends for a while, and I didn't know that you were doing consulting all along. And it came up in a random conversation. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Why are you not doing this? So let's talk about it. You're starting it, right? What are you specializing in?
Yeah. So, and you definitely, I really credit you and some others as well for kind of giving me that kick in the pants that I needed. For us, as much as I hate to say this, I hate operations. It's tough. And for venue owners listening, and for anyone listening, when you really get into the weeds of running the business and managing a lot of people, and especially if you're trying to grow something really big and you even have multiple locations potentially, or you have multiple businesses, managing people and, putting all the systems in place and all that, and the accountability, that's something personally that doesn't come naturally to me. I'll say that. And so for us, ironically now, that's, I think, the area that we can provide the biggest service to this industry, because we've gone through so much pain in terms of all of the operational stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of the lessons that we've learned, the kind of the scars that we have, and the ways that we've done things wrong, and also the ways that we've done things right. And so that has been the direction that we're going, in terms of sometimes it doesn't make sense for a venue to bring us on as a management partner. Sometimes it makes sense for us to go in and kind of help them tweak some of the operational things and maybe slow them down. At the end of the day, you can have an incredible marketing program. You can have a really aesthetic, beautiful venue, but if you don't have a system that takes them and turns them from a lead to a really highly engaged lead, to then a booked, event, to a executed event that comes out with a wonderful review, that whole process in between, it'll mess up your marketing, or if you don't have a portion of your systems done. So for us, really the focus is on people's systems, on their venue operating system, which is actually something that we're at the tail end of creating right now. We have an operating system that we operate all of our venues on. And so part of this consulting is packaging that up and being able to offer it to a venue that doesn't want to bring us on as a management partner, because they want to manage it. They want to operate it by themselves, but they do need some of those systems and processes, and they just don't want to guess and spend 5 years learning it the hard way like we did.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So they can choose one or the other, right? They could choose management or they can choose consulting. Consulting, what does that look like? I don't mean your actual nitty gritty of your packages and your pricing and stuff, but I mean if I was coming to you as a client, what would I even say that I need?
Totally. And that's a good question, because sometimes it's hard to know what you need. So we end up figuring that out in the discovery process. So usually how the conversations go, someone comes to us and they might know us for doing venue management. That's maybe how they got exposed to us. So they might start out the conversation saying, hey, we're interested in venue management from you guys. And as we do some of the discovery and we have some of those conversations, we might realize, hey, it's not going to serve this venue for us to even pitch venue management, because maybe they're too early in the process. Maybe it just wouldn't make sense with how they funded the deal and they financed the deal, and there's some loan payments or some different things that they're heavily leveraged maybe. So we'll discover that in the process, and then we'll say, hey, we feel like the best way we can serve you is this, and we'll kind of diagnose it. And so, yeah, usually that's kind of a discovery process. If you know what you want and you just want some accountability or some systems help or something like that, we can totally help with that as well and piecemeal it. This industry is so different, and that's one of the things that I love about it. But it's very hard to kind of stick people into a one size fits all bucket. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that too. We do a lot of custom proposals over here, so I totally get that. So, okay, is it all virtual, or do you go to them for consulting?
Yeah, we go to them. So I think one of the things, and I think so, the Venue Academy, we could shift gears a little bit and chat about that maybe, but that might derail us. I don't know. I love the fact that you're like building that as a resource, as a library of resources. I think that it's super important to offer people both things. And I know you do this as well, like with the walkthroughs and the different on-site things that you do. But I think that that's really important because it is easy to, everyone's seen the little download buttons. You click and you get a PDF and you get a spreadsheet, you get some free resources, which are great and they're inspiring. But then it's like, how do we apply them? How does the rubber really hit the road, and how does this make a difference in my business? And so for us, the hands-on piece is really important. And the consulting we've done in the past has always included an in-person element. So if that's showing up one time and doing kind of an initial consult, or if that's having a couple of different scheduled pieces, the longest consulting engagement that we've been a part of was about 9 months. And they basically hired us to come in, hire the people, put the systems in place, do all of the things, and then hand it off back to the owners with the processes and systems that we had set. So I wish I could tell you I have the platinum, the gold, the bronze package. It is definitely more custom than that, and it's based on the venue owner, because urban venues are very, very different. And like our relationship with that city client that has it's like 150 people max, but that's really stretching it. It is a smaller space. That is very different than a 110-acre winery. Very different from. So it's very. It has to be customized to be able to serve the needs of each individual client.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's so great. So,
did I answer the question? I feel like, did I?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So basically the perfect consulting client, even if they don't know what they want, they're probably feeling really overwhelmed. And like they're just keeping their head above water, surviving the day-to-day stuff, right? Like that's the point where they should probably take a step back and be like, even though I have a team, I don't feel like I'm utilizing them to the best of my ability, even if it's like a small team, right? And I need some external help to come in and just give a different perspective on things. Like maybe I'm too close to like the business, which I think is a good thing for like any business owner, right? Like we're all way too close. Like I know you've hired outside mentors. I
was just going to say
all the time.
Yeah.
Because we're all too close to our business to like really see the actual issue and how to improve things. Like we have an idea, but not like in a microscopic level, right? So like if I'm a venue owner, that's kind of like my telltale sign, like I'm overwhelmed. I don't 100% love what I'm doing anymore, even though I got into it with the best intentions, but it's like the day to day, it's just so all consuming and I can't shut it off kind of thing. Right.
Totally. Yeah. I think depending on where the venue is at in its life cycle and in its journey, there are these plateaus that we get to, and we've personally experienced breaking through so many of those and working with different types of staff, full-time, part-time, contract. We've hired thousands of people, and I wouldn't say fired thousands, but definitely fired hundreds of people, or needed to fire them or let them go. And so you get I think, there's some friction around people, getting the right people in the right seats, but then there's also processes. And I think it's very difficult if you haven't been there, to know how to replicate it. And I can say, after COVID hit us, rebuilding a venue management company from a staffing company was so much easier because we knew some business stuff already. And so, yeah, for those venue owners, if you're feeling really stressed out, a little bit underwater, things like that, to your point, Lindsey, it's like, get a little perspective, pull back a little bit. And for us, we do that. I mean, at the beginning of this year, we hired a consulting team actually not specifically from our industry. They really hyper focus on real estate. And we wanted that real estate piece there, but it was really, really expensive. And I was a little nervous to hire them because I was like, gosh, like this, yeah. And it was tough. And I would say it took a while for us vetting them out. But one of the things that I was looking for is that they walked the talk, that they didn't provide fluff, like business fluff, but they provided really hands-on work. And so it's a very, very involved kind of consulting program that they give to us, but they keep me accountable, and I say we have quarterly commitments, and I, say that we're going to do these different things. And if we don't do it, they hold me accountable. They're like, hey, you said this was important. Why didn't it get done? So sometimes even from an accountability level, a venue owner might know what they need to do, but it's tough because as the leader of the ship, there's no one who's telling you what to do. And so buying that, I think, has been one of the most valuable things for our business, and even has helped me. Like if I'm nervous about telling Sally, hey, like we got to go in this direction, I know from a gut level, like we need to handle a lead in this direction, or hey, we need to do this, or we need to do that, because I'm always learning. And I think as venue owners, we are always learning, and as operators, but sometimes it's tough telling the team that, and then you don't want to be the bad guy. So it also has been a nice way to say, hey, look, we hired this consulting company. They know what they're doing. They say they see this opportunity. We got to do it. Changes need to happen. And so that's been another way that it's consulting and kind of bringing in that outside force has been helpful.
Yeah, I love that you said that about, you're the leader of the ship and there's nobody to guide you. Like that's hitting the nail on the head. That's a perfect description.
It's like freedom, because we want the freedom, but then also like freedom without, like there is freedom within accountability and with a framework. But you just, as the leader, you have to be willing to subject yourself to that. And that does give you freedom in a weird sort of way. But it's tough because unless you have that, it's very easy to just spend your time. Like I did an accounting of my time, and I'm like, what am I doing all day? Like I'm kind of flitting from thing to thing to thing. And I need to be more focused, and I need to be more accountable as the leader. And I can't just say, oh, I'm the CEO, like I get to do whatever I want. No, like you need to be walking the talk.
Yes. Yeah. You have to be intentional with what you're doing from a day-to-day basis, especially as a CEO, not more so as a CEO. So I love that you said that. Okay. If a venue owner is listening to this interview and they are identifying and seeing themselves in everything that you're talking about, and they're like, you know what, like I didn't recognize it until I started hearing like, hey, I identify with this. Yes, I'm having this pain point too. I didn't know this is what could potentially solve my problems. Like what would be their next step to reach out to you for both like venue management? Where do they go? If they're interested in learning more about your consulting packages, where do they go? Like what's the best next step for them to do?
Totally. Great question. And I think it comes down to kind of how, like you said, how they identify where they feel like they have the most need. Our venue management package and product really works well for someone who's interested in being more of like a real estate investor and not as much an active participant in the day-to-day of their business. So this is like a legacy venue owner that's looking for another door. Door number one is like sell, right? Door number two is like build that team yourself and have to manage those people. But we have a third door. Like you can keep your property, you still own the business, but you step away from the business and we operate the brand for you. We partner with you. We kind of fit inside your existing system and we run it for you. And so you can step back and, we have venue owners that live 15, 20 minutes up the road. And we have venue owners that live 3 hours away and see the venue, once a quarter. So that's on the management side. And then on the consulting side, it's someone who's maybe getting started. They want to be in the day-to-day and hands-on, but they're struggling with systems, or they're struggling with sales, or they're struggling with leads, or they're struggling with the venue operations and kind of getting some of that going really seamlessly so they can get out of that and focus more on other highly leveraged activities. And so the process for both of those is the same. You just send us an email. Honestly, you can reach out to us on the Venue RX, hello@thevenuerx.com. You can also check out the Common Sense Events website. and we can put all the links and all that to there. But usually it starts with a phone call, and someone will fill out an inquiry form. We try to get back to those pretty quick and just say, hey, like, tell us what's going on. What are the pain points? What are the struggles? What do you need? And then based on that, we kind of filter them and say, it seems like you'd be a great candidate for this because you don't want to operate the business. The business is running. We know you're doing $500,000 a year. We can probably add 300,000 of revenue for you. And then it makes sense. If it doesn't, and it's like, hey, I love my venue. I live on property, but I'm just really struggling with leads, or I'm really struggling with sales, or I'm really struggling keeping my team accountable. Or I don't know where my leads are actually coming from because so many of the CRM systems out there don't do a good job reporting and tracking, and they just need some PDFs or some reports or whatever. Then we can help with that too. So we sift it based on that first call. Okay.
So I have one last question for consulting. Are there any states that you're looking to target next? Because you had mentioned that y'all are,
we're moving. Yeah, we're moving out of California. So I'm originally from Texas, and I was born and raised in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We actually a couple years ago almost bought a home out there. We've got 5 going on 6 kids. I really, really wanted to move more to the Midwest, or and I think there's business reasons. There's a number of different reasons for that, but we really are looking at Arizona. We're looking at Texas. We actually just looked at a venue in Oklahoma. Like I already said, we're out in Georgia now. The Georgia, like the venue market across the country is just insane. Like I was looking at all these, and I've, been on a number of different venue tours and audited venues and things like that. And just like the beauty that some of these venues have, it's insane. And in California, I honestly think that we kind of cheap out a little bit because, we're here in San Diego, we've got the beach. And so the beach is kind of like, you got the beach, like that's the view you're going for. But no, we manage such a wide variety of venues here that aren't just beach venues, that when you start comparing like a ranch venue or a winery venue here compared to Georgia, compared to Texas, compared to Virginia, some of these places. So yeah, to directly answer your question, there's no like specific state, but we definitely are looking in Arizona. We're looking in Texas. We're looking more in Georgia. We're looking in Montana. We're looking in Tennessee. We did a couple of consulting gigs out closer to the Smoky Mountains, and that was like amazing. So I'd love to work with some venues in Tennessee. Nashville might even be a place that we would call home one day, kind of in that area. So I don't know, kind of some of those states are top of mind for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, okay, you have CSE, you have venue management, you have consulting now, and then obviously you have the podcast, and then Weba is like quickly gaining traction and coming up. We haven't talked about the podcast.
Yeah. So the podcast, I love this thing. I love the podcast. For me, so I had a podcast originally, actually, and we called it. We had a couple of different names for it, but basically, I loved interviewing business owners, entrepreneurs, people who were really successful, and I had the pleasure of interviewing some really like pretty high level entrepreneurs who are making hundreds of millions of dollars a year and really had made an impact in their industries, and I loved that so much. And when we got in, and that was in 2016, 17, 18, coming into the venue management world and the venue world and even the events world, I knew there were podcasts and resources out there for planners. I knew there was community around photographers. I knew DJs kind of had their community. But when I went out to look for a community of venue owners and operators, I couldn't find anything. And, honestly, you and Lindsey, you and Kristen Benford were the two people, like very early on. I did a Google search and I found the two of you. I found some of your online resources around like risk management and disaster preparedness. I found, some Kristen has a blog that popped up about pricing, right? When you first kind of do that search. But there wasn't anything. There wasn't a association. There wasn't a community group. There were a few podcasts. You have your podcast that's just fantastic. And by the way, kudos. The episodes you've been releasing are just like fire. So if anyone's listening, go check out Lindsey's podcast. It's Tell Me the Name. It's the Venue podcast.
The Venue podcast. Super, super creative. The Venue podcast.
Oh, but it's easy. It's findable. So yeah, check out the Venue podcast. But with Kinsey Roberts, Lindsey and Kinsey do a great job. But for us, there was just nothing. I felt like there was nothing that really was heavy educational based, and then also told the stories of the industry. And so that started in 2020. We actually started it with a owner of another venue management company, believe it or not. And then he bowed out after a couple of episodes, and I kept it going, and it really didn't have that much momentum. I mean, we were doing it for a year and seeing pretty much zero results. And I was really encouraged by a lot of other people that I knew from kind of the previous podcasting stuff that just kind of ignore the results, stay focused on the process. And so we did that. We kept growing it. My wife got involved as our creative director, and that was a game changer because she was really starting to post more content. We also changed our video editing team. We made some changes, and then we also started the venue owner series, which was so much fun because you're talking to venue owners. You're not talking to coaches, consultants. You're not talking to like experts per se, but you're hearing from real people that have gotten the trenches, have done the things, they've applied for the permits, they pay the mortgage, they really are in it. And so that has been the most fun. We've interviewed over 100 venue owners at this point. And we've also talked to so many of the professionals in the industry, from planners, DJs, consultants, officiants, people who are owners of platforms, marketing resources, all sorts of different things. And so that I think has been a growing and developing passion. And I think that as we continue to scale CSE, Common Sense Events, kind of the management and the consulting side of stuff, is like the kitchen. We're experimenting, we're iterating, and we're iterating at a very high rate because we're doing it ×5 or ×6 in urban venues, in suburban venues, in rural venues. And so we get to experiment what works, what doesn't work. It's not a one size fits all. And as we see that, we can kind of come back to the podcast and we can share the info and kind of some of the lessons that we've learned, the things that have worked, and then I think build a community around venue owners, venue operators, but then also vendors, like people who work with venues. Yeah. And so, that's really where that started. And I'm just so excited for how that's going to continue growing. And, if you're a venue owner listening to this right now and you haven't been on yet, I want to interview you. It'd be great. It's fun conversations. I mean, Lindsey, you've been on what, twice now? 3 times? I
think so. Yeah. A few times for sure. Yeah. And it is super fun. You're fantastic at interviewing. I myself personally, I'm an introvert. So like getting on it, like it takes work to like pull the information out of me sometimes, but you do such a great job of like keeping the conversation flowing. It's nice.
Well, Lindsey, you are fantastic at interviewing. You guys need to do like a interview segment on the Venue podcast. That'd be cool. But I would never guess that you're introverted, because like even the content that you post, with Kinsey, I think is incredible, and just getting to know you has been really awesome. I've been really grateful for our friendship.
Hey, same.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun. It's been a little bit different for everyone who's listening or maybe watching on YouTube, and so you'll have to let us know if you enjoyed it. And yeah, we'll have to share a little bit later about WEVA and what's happening with the Venue Association. So really excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, this has been fun, Lindsey. Thank you so much, and we'll talk real soon.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to interview. That was a lot of fun.
This is super neat. Okay, we'll talk soon.
Bye.